The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus told his disciples a parable. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Will not both fall into a pit? No disciple is superior to the teacher, but when fully trained, every disciple will be like his teacher. Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me remove that splinter in your eye," when you do not even notice the wooden beam in your own eye? You hypocrite! Remove the wooden beam from your eye first, then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. A good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its own fruit. For people do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles. A good person, out of the store of goodness in his heart, produces good. But an evil person, out of the store of evil, produces evil. And from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. The Gospel of the Lord. A war in Europe in the 21st century seemed improbable, even impossible. Now there are already many dead. There are fears of a bloodbath. There are the usual innocent victims who wanted nothing more than to live in peace with others, with everyone. The risk of an escalation is unthinkable. Pope Francis calls us to counter the power of arms with the weakness of prayer. Speaking at the end of his general audience on Wednesday, the Pope invited everyone to make March 2nd, Ash Wednesday, a day of fasting for peace. He said, "I encourage believers in a special way to dedicate themselves intensely to prayer and fasting on that day. May the Queen of Peace preserve the world from the madness of war." I grew up not far from St. Michael the Archangel Ukrainian Catholic Church in Jenkintown, PA, and Manor Junior College, a Ukrainian Catholic college where my friend Father Al Maslak teaches. Like Father Al, there are 60,000 folks of Ukrainian descent living in the Philadelphia area. My prayers are with them and their relatives. And our prayers need to be with the brave Ukrainian people who are standing up to Mr. Putin's aggression. An evil heart produces evil. I know many of you are already planning to come to Mass on Ash Wednesday. I would encourage you to come early. I will begin exposition of the Blessed Sacrament at 7 a.m. and again at 5 p.m. before the Masses. The Rosary will be recited, as it usually is, at 7:40 a.m. and will be offered for peace in the Ukraine. Ash Wednesday is already a day of fasting. And as I suggested in the bulletin today, all of us would do well to take seriously the Church's guidelines on fasting and abstinence. We really have gotten too laid back about our faith practices. The last few years really haven't been all that great. We are a divided country over the politics of race and immigration. We haven't been unified in how to deal with a pandemic. Even within our own church, there's a vocal group of traditionalists who don't very much care for Pope Francis's pastoral approach. And now the world is on edge with a war in Europe. One could ask, what is wrong with the world? When a newspaper asked that question in the midst of the horrors of the 20th century, the Catholic author and writer G.K. Chesterton responded as follows: "What is wrong with the world? Dear sirs, I am. Sincerely yours, G.K. Chesterton." Beyond prayer and a willingness to endure the higher aluminum and gas prices that will suffer with the sanctions against Russia, we are powerless to do very much about the war in Ukraine. But if we hope for a better world, the place to begin is right here. We begin Lent with the hope that we might create a better world by being better followers of Jesus. So rather than focusing in on the faults and sins of others, we need to take an honest look at the sin in our own life. In the gospel, Jesus encouraged us to remove the beam from your own eye. He wants us to pay attention to our own faults and weaknesses so that we can become the disciples who have been fully trained and are like our teacher himself. Now, some might not agree with me, but that would suggest to me that you make at least one good confession during the holy season of Lent. I've been kind of lonely in the confessional of late. Our Lenten penance service will be on March 28th, and I hope, once again, for a good turnout. But I'm available every Saturday afternoon and by appointment at any time. Jesus in the gospel today offers us a good examination of conscience as he builds on the first reading where Sirach used the image of a fruit tree. Jesus says that every tree is known by its own fruit. For Sirach, our speech is one of our fruits. Jesus extends that image and says not only our speech, but our attitudes and our actions are also our fruits. So when people listen to and observe our speech and attitudes and actions, is it clear that we are bearing good fruit? Is it clear that they are hearing and seeing men and women of faith who are striving to build a better world? If it's not clear, then perhaps our Lent, in the midst of a world crisis, might be a good time to change things around. Amen.